It's a long story, but one you've never heard before. This story is about a place that dwells up on the mountain. A place where bad things happen. And you may think you know about the bad things. You may decide you have it all figured out, but you don't. Because the truth is worse than monsters or men. At first, I was upset when they told me we were moving to some little town out in the Ozarks. I remember staring at my dinner plate while I listened to my sister throw a temper tantrum unbefitting of a 14-year-old honors student. She cried, she pleaded, and then she cursed at my parents. She threw a bowl at my dad and told him it was all his fault. Mom told Whitney to calm down, but she stormed off, slamming every door in the house on the way to her room. I secretly blamed my dad as well. I'd heard the whispers too. My dad had done something wrong, something bad, and the sheriff's department had reassigned him to some little out-of-the-way county to save face. My parents didn't want me to know that, but I did. I was 9, so it didn't take me too long to warm to the idea of a change. It was like an adventure. New house, new school, new friends. Whitney, of course, felt the opposite. Moving to a new school at her age is hard. Moving away from her new boyfriend, however, was even harder. While the rest of us packed up our things and said our goodbyes, Whitney sulked and cried and threatened to run away from home. But a month later, when we pulled up to our new house in Drisking, Missouri, she was sitting right next to me texting viciously on her phone. Thankfully, we moved over the summer, and I had months of free time to explore the town. When Dad started his new job at the sheriff's office, Mom drove us around the city, commenting on this and that. The city was much smaller than St. Louis, but also a lot nicer. There were no bad areas, and the entire town looked like something you'd see on a postcard. Drisking was built in a mountain valley, surrounded by healthy forest land with walking trails and crystal clear lakes. I was 9, it was summer, and this was heaven. We'd only been living in Drisking a week or so when our next-door neighbors came to introduce themselves, Mr. and Mrs. Landy, and their 10-year-old son Kyle. While our parents talked and drank mimosas, I watched the Landys' lanky, red-headed son hung out in the doorway, shyly eyeing the PlayStation 2 in the living room. Do you play?" I asked. He shrugged. "Not really." "Do you wanna? I just got Tekken 4. Kyle glanced at his mom, who had just been handed her 3rd mimosa. "Yeah, sure." And that afternoon, with the ease and simplicity of our age, Kyle and I became best friends. We spent the cool summer mornings outside exploring the Ozarks, and the hot afternoons in my living room playing the PS2. He introduced me to the only other kid in the neighborhood our age, a skinny, quiet girl named Kimber DeStaro. She was shy but friendly and always up for anything. Kimber kept up with us so well that she quickly became the 3rd wheel on our tricycle. With my dad at work all the time, my mom consumed with her new friendships, and my sister locked in her room all day, the summer was ours to take, and take it we did. Kyle and Kimber showed me where all the best hiking trails were, which lakes were the best and most accessible by bike, and where the best stores were in town. By the time the first day of school rolled around in September, I knew I was home. On the last Saturday before school started, Kyle and Kimber told me they were going to take me somewhere special, somewhere we hadn't been yet. The Triple Tree. "What's a triple tree?" I asked. "It's a totally awesome, totally huge treehouse out in the woods," Kyle said excitedly. "Whatever, Kyle. Come on, you guys. If there was a freaking treehouse, you would have showed it to me already." "Nuh-uh, we wouldn't have." Kyle shook his head. "There's a ceremony for first-timers and everything." Kimber nodded eagerly in agreement, her dark orange curls bouncing off her tiny shoulders. "Yep, it's true, Sam.
If you enter the treehouse without the proper ceremony, you'll disappear, and then you'll die."
My face fell. Now I knew they were making fun of me.
"That's a lie. You guys are lying to me." "No, we're not," Kimber insisted. "Yeah, we'll show you. We just have to get a knife for the ceremony, and we'll go." "What? Why do you need a knife?" "Is it a blood ceremony?" I whispered. "No way," Kimber promised. "You just say some words and carve your name into the triple tree." "Yep, it takes like 1 minute," Kyle agreed.
"And it's a really cool treehouse?" I asked.
"Oh yeah," Kyle promised. "Okay, I guess I'll do it then." Kyle insisted on using the same knife he used during his own ceremony, but we paid a price to get it. Mrs. Landy just happened to be home with her youngest son Parker, and despite Kyle's many objections, his mother insisted he take his 6-year-old brother with him. "Mom, we're going to the treehouse. It's for older kids. Parker can't go." "I don't care if you're going to see an Exorcist movie marathon. You're taking your brother with you." "I need a break, Kyle. Can't you understand that? And I'm sure your friends won't mind." She flashed Kimber and me a challenging look. "Right?" "No, not at all," Kimber said, and I nodded in agreement. Kyle made a loud, dramatic sigh and called his brother. "Parker, put your shoes on. We're leaving now." I'd met the youngest Landy several times before and found that he was as unlike his older brother in looks as in disposition. Where Kyle was a wild, excitable fireball with hair to match, I found Parker to be an anxious, fidgety boy with small eyes and dark brown hair. We got on our bikes and made our way to a lesser-known hiking trail a few miles away. I'd asked before where the trail led when we'd ridden across it several weeks before, and Kyle had given me the underwhelming answer of, "Nowhere interesting." We pulled up to trailhead and leaned our bikes against the wooden signpost which read, "West Rim Prescott Ore Trail." "Why are there so many trails around here named Prescott?" I asked. "Is this Prescott Mountain or something?" Kimber laughed. "No, dummy. It's because of the Prescotts. You know, the family that lives in the mansion up on Fairmont. Mr. Prescott and his son Jimmy own like half the businesses in town." "More than half," Kyle agreed. "Which ones? Does he own the GameStop?" The only store in Drisking I really cared about. "I don't know about that one." Kyle wound a lock around the 4 bikes and clicked the bar into place, then spun the numbers on the dial. "But like the hardware store, the pharmacy, Glayton's on 2nd, and the newspaper." "Did they start the town?" I asked. "Nah, mining started the town. I want to go home." Parker had been so quiet I'd completely forgotten he was there. "You can't go home." Kyle rolled his eyes. "Mom said I had to bring you. Now come on, it's only like a 2-mile walk." "I want to take my bike," Parker answered. "Too bad, we're going off trail." "I don't want to go. I'll stay with the bikes." "Don't be such a wussy." "I'm not." "Kyle, be nice," Kimber hissed. "He's only 5. "I'm 6, Parker objected. "I'm sorry, 6. You're 6. Kimber smiled at him. "Alright, fine. He can hold your hand if he wants, but he's coming." Kyle turned and started up the trail. Parker's face fell into an undignified frown, but when the charming Kimber stuck her hand out and wiggled her fingers at him, he took it. Kyle was right. It wasn't a long walk. Only a half-mile down the trail, and then another half-mile on a well-tread path up the mountain. It was a steep climb, though, and by the time we got to the treehouse, I was winded. "What do you think?" Kyle asked, excitedly. I studied the tree as I caught my breath. "It's pretty awesome," I smiled. And it was. They hadn't lied. The treehouse was the biggest I'd ever seen. It had multiple rooms, and there were actual curtains in the windows. A sign above the door said, "Ambercott Fort," and a rope ladder hung down below the threshold, missing several planks. "I'm going up first," yelled Parker, but Kimber caught his arm. "You have to do the ceremony first, or you'll disappear," she reminded him. "That'd be fine with me," Kyle grumbled. I was eager to get into the fort myself. "Give me the knife." I held out my hand. Kyle smiled and dug the switchblade out of his pocket. "There's some space in the back to carve your name." I opened up the knife and walked around the tree looking for an empty spot. There were so many names on the tree that I had to crunch down and look near the bottom since I couldn't reach any higher. I spotted both Kyle and Kimber's carvings on the tree, and I finally found a spot I liked near the ladder. I bit my tongue and carved Sam W. into a blank piece of bark underneath someone named Paul S. Parker went next, but had so much trouble with the knife that Kyle had to do it for him. "All right, let's go." I ran over to the rope ladder. "Wait," Kyle yelled. "You have to say the words first." "Oh, yeah. Okay, what are they?" Kimber sang them out. "Underneath the triple tree, there is a man who waits for me, and should I go or should I stay, my fate's the same either way." "That's creepy," I said. "What does it mean?" Kimber shrugged. "No one knows anymore. It's just tradition." "Okay, can you say it one more time, slower?" Once Parker and I had recited the poem, we were ready to go. I climbed the rope ladder first and took stock of my new surroundings. The treehouse was more or less empty, just a dirty rug here and there and some trash. Old soda cans, beer cans, and fast food wrappers. I went room to room, 4 in total, and found nothing of real interest until the last one. An old mattress lay in the corner, and piles of musty, ripped clothing scattered the floor. "Did a hobo live here?" I asked. "Nah, this room has been like this for as long as I can remember," Kyle said from the doorway behind me. "It smells gross," I said. Kimber walked up to the threshold, but refused to go any further. "It's not the smell that freaks me out. It's that." She pointed up to the ceiling, and I raised my eyes to read what was written there. "Road to the gates of hell. Mile marker 1. "What does it mean?" I asked. "It's just older kids being dicks," Kyle said. "Come on, I'll show you the best part of the treehouse." We walked back into the first room, and Parker looked up at us and smiled, pointing down to what he'd clumsily carved into the wooden floor. "Fart," Kyle read. "That's hilarious, Parker." He rolled his eyes, but his little brother didn't pick up on the sarcasm and smiled proudly. Kimber sat down on the floor next to Parker, and I sat on his other side. Kyle took the knife from his brother, and then walked across the room and wedged the blade between 2 planks of the wooded wall. He pushed, and the board gave, opening up a small, secret compartment in the wall. Kyle took something out and pushed the plank back in until it was flush with the others. "Check it out." He turned around and proudly held up 2 cans of Miller Lite beer. "Whoa," I said. "Ew, warm beer? That's gross." "How did you even know it was there?" Kimber asked. "Phil Saunders told me." "Are we gonna drink it?" I asked. "Hell yeah, we're gonna drink it." Kyle came and sat down in our circle, popped open the first beer, and offered it to Kimber. She eyed it like he was trying to hand her a dirty diaper. "Come on, Kimmy." "Don't call me that," she yelled at him, and then reluctantly took the open beer. She smelled it and made a face, then pinched her nose and took a small swig. Kimber shuddered. "That was even grosser than I imagined." "I don't want any. I'll tell Mom," Parker said quickly as the beer passed in front of him to me. "Good, 'cause you ain't getting any," Kyle promised, "and you won't tell Mom shit." I put on my best poker face and took a long, deep swallow of the warm beer before I had the chance to smell it. It was a poor decision, and when I retched, the foul yellow liquid went all over my shirt. Aw, man, now I'm gonna smell like beer. We spent the next hour and a half drinking the 2 cans of Miller Lite, and after a while the taste grew more tolerable. I couldn't tell if I was becoming a man, or actually getting drunk. I hoped it was the former. When the last drop of the last beer was consumed, we spent 20 minutes trying to determine if we were drunk. Kyle assured us that he was wasted, while Kimber wasn't sure. I didn't think I was, but I failed all of our drunk tests. Kimber was in the middle of reciting the alphabet backwards when a loud metallic grinding suddenly pierced the calm mountain air like a gunshot. Kimber stopped talking, and we spent a few minutes staring at each other, waiting for the noise to end. Parker curled into Kimber and put his hands over his ears. After what seemed like 10 whole minutes, the sound ended as suddenly as it had begun. "What was that?" I asked, and Parker mumbled something into Kimber's sweatshirt. "Do you guys know?" I tried again. Kimber stared at her feet as she crossed and uncrossed them. "Well?" "It's nothing," Kyle answered finally. "We hear it sometimes in town. It's not a big deal, it's just louder up here." "But what's making that sound?" "Borrasca," Kimber whispered, without taking her eyes off her feet. "Who's that?" I asked. "Not who. Where?" Kyle answered. "It's a place." "Another town?" "No, it's just a place in the woods." "Oh." "Bad things happen there," Kimber said, more to herself than me. "Like what?" "Bad things," Kimber repeated. "Yeah, don't ever try to find it, dude," Kyle said behind me, "or bad things will happen to you, too." "But like, what bad things?" I turned around. Kyle shrugged, and Kimber stood up and walked over to the rope ladder. "We'd better go. I have to get home to my mom," she said. We climbed down the ladder one by one, and then started the walk back to the trailhead in an unfamiliar silence. I was dying of curiosity about Borrasca, but couldn't decide if and what to ask about it. "So, who lives there?" "Where?" Kyle asked. "Borrasca." "The skinned men," Parker answered. Pfft, Kyle laughed. "Only babies believe that." "Like men who are skinned? Like their skin is gone?" I asked excitedly. "Yeah, that's what some kids say. Most of us stopped believing in that, though, when we turned double digits," Kyle said. I looked back at Kimber, who was still 9 like me, but she was staring down the trail, ignoring us. That seemed to be the end of the conversation, and by the time we reached our bikes, the awkwardness was gone and we were giggling, trying to decide if we were too drunk to bike home. School started 2 days later, and I'd completely forgotten about Borrasca. When my dad pulled up to the curb to drop me off that morning, he locked the doors before I could get out. "Not so fast," he laughed. "As your father, I get the privilege of giving you a hug and telling you to have a good first day of school." "But Dad, I gotta go meet Kyle by the flag before first bell." "And you will, but give me a hug first. In a few years, you'll be driving yourself to school. Let me be your dad while I still can." "Fine," I said, exacerbated, and leaned over to give my dad a quick hug. "Thank you. Now go and meet your friend. Your mom will be waiting here to pick you up at 3:40. "I know, Dad. Why can't I take the bus like Whitney?" "When you're 12, you can take the bus." He smiled and unlocked the doors. "Until then, I get to drop you off in the mornings. If you think it'd make you look cooler, you can ride in the back seat behind the cage." "Dad, just don't." I threw open the door of his cruiser before he could say anything else more, and ran as he laughed behind me. Kyle was already waiting for me at the flagpole, and he'd found Kimber too. "Dude, you almost missed the bell," he yelled when he saw me. "I know, sorry." "Whose class are you in?" Kimber asked. She was wearing a red sweater and leggings with frogs on them. Her curly orange hair was brushed into ringlets, and her lips were pink and shiny. She'd never looked prettier, and I was surprised to realize I'd never really seen Kimber as a girl. Mr. Diamond's." "Me too," she said cheerfully. "Lucky," Kyle scoffed. "I'm in Mrs. Tverdy's. Only 2 4th-grade teachers, and I get the crappy one." Kimber grimaced. "Yeah, my mom had her when she was a kid." "What's wrong with her? What did she say?" "Just that she's strict and gives out homework on the weekends." "On the weekends? Fuck!" "Excuse me, Mr. Landy." I immediately recognized the tall man that had suddenly appeared behind the white-faced Kyle. Sorry, sir. I meant dang. Kimber giggled. I'm sure you did, he nodded. Hi, Sheriff Clary. Even though I'd only met him a few times, I liked my dad's boss, and he liked me. Well, hello, Sammy. Are you excited for your first day? Sheriff Clary crossed his arms in front of him and widened his stance imposingly, but he gave me a wide smile. Yes, sir, I said, and then added lamely, What are you doing here? I'm giving a presentation to the 5th and 6th graders about safety when walking to and from school. Yeah, he gives it every year, Kyle muttered. Cool, I smiled. Sheriff Clary nodded at me, then turned and walked away. I looked around, confused. Where's Kimber? She took off. She is annoyingly on time to everything. And as if to illustrate his point, the bell rang. We both ran up the stairs and inside. I walked into class and saw that Kimber had saved me a spot next to her at the back. Mr. Diamond at the front, a short, round man of 40 or so, nodded at me when I came in. Mr. Walker, I presume? Yeah, that's me. I mumbled as I rushed past him to the desk next to Kimber. Welcome to Drisking Elementary. And for the rest of you, welcome back. Go Grizzlies! The class echoed a reluctant and subdued, Go Grizzlies. Kimber introduced me to the other kids in the class throughout the morning. Most of them were nice, if sort of underwhelmed by me. They said their hellos and asked where I was from, and the conversations usually ended with an unimpressed, okay. A group of girls who sat near the front snuck looks at us all morning and snickered. I asked Kimber who they were, and she just shrugged. During our second break, they came up and talked to me. Are you friends with Kimber Testaro? A tall, dark-haired girl asked me. Yeah, I answered, and looked over at Kimber. She was watching me with worried eyes. Are you related to her? No. I didn't think so, because you don't have orange hair. I didn't know what to say to that. You don't have to be friends with her, you know, said the second girl with the oddly round face. I want to be friends with her. A third girl behind the other two snorted. She had pretty auburn hair and a rude upturned nose. Well, if you do, you're going to be in the ugly kid group, the first girl warned. And once you're in that group, you can't leave it ever. Better than the bitch group, I said. Rude nose and round-faced gasped, but dark hair smiled. We'll see, she said, and the three returned to their corner of the room. I sat back down next to Kimber, feeling like a badass. It was the first time I'd ever used a swear word in front of anybody other than Kyle. What did they say to you? Kimber asked nervously. They said you're too pretty to be near them, and yet you make them look gross, so we have to stay away from them. Liar, Kimber answered, but I could tell she was smiling. We met Kyle in the cafeteria at lunch, and he had nothing but bad things to say about his morning. Mrs. DeVerde was old and mean, and she had made everyone come up and say something about themselves, even though the class only had 14 kids and they all knew each other. When the bell rang for recess, I went to throw my lunch away with Kyle, and I bumped into a kid I hadn't seen before. Hey, are you Sam Walker? The kid asked. Yeah. Oh, your sister is dating my brother. Oh man, Kyle laughed. Your sister is dating a Whittaker! Shut up, Kyle, the kid grumbled. She's gonna be Whitney Whittaker! As funny as it was, I couldn't help but be a little surprised. Not that I'd been paying attention, but I'd only seen Whitney out of her room once over the summer. Where did she meet him? I asked the Whittaker kid. I don't know. Probably at his job. His job where? He works at Drisking Water. It didn't make any sense to me, but I shrugged it off. I did remember my mom giving Whitney some menial tasks like getting the car washed and setting up some utilities to get her out of the house. Maybe she met him once and they started dating over text? Teenagers were weird. The rest of the school week followed much like the first day. We were well into the first month when I heard someone mention the skinned men again. We were out on the playground, and Kyle and I were trying to start a fire with 2 large wood chips. I'd just given myself a splinter,
when the distant sound of metal grinding on metal flooded over the playground, silencing every one of us. "Borrasca," I said in awe. "Yep," said Phil Saunders. "The skinned men kill again."
Hey, Kyle said only babies believed in the skinned men.
I threw an accusatory look at Kyle.
They do. Phil is just stupid.
I'm not. Ask Danielle, she's seen them. Phil scanned the playground, and then yelled at a blonde girl talking to Rude Nose. "Hey Danielle, come here!" The blonde girl rolled her eyes, but came skipping over anyway.
What do you want? I told you Kayla doesn't like you, Philip.
No, tell them about the skinned men. Phil gestured to the air around us, which was filled with the metallic scraping coming down from the mountain.
You tell them.
No, you saw them, so you tell them.
I didn't see them. Paige saw them.
Oh, Phil said, and an uncomfortable silence descended.
You guys are weird,
Danielle said before flipping her hair in our faces and leaving.
Who's Paige? I asked when she'd gone.
Her sister, Phil said.
Paige disappeared when we were like 5,
Kyle said. After she saw the skinned men, Phil added. The sounds from the mountain abruptly ended, and the subdued atmosphere of the playground disappeared with it. When the bell rang, Kyle lined up in his class line, and since Phil was in my class, I made sure I was behind him. The teachers began to count us off.
Hey, what else do you know about Borrasca? I whispered to him.
My brother said that's where people go when they disappear. To Borrasca.
What happens to them there?
Bad things, he said, and then shushed me when I asked him what that meant. The year dragged on, and it wasn't until Christmas break that I heard the machine at Borrasca again. It was December, and there was a thick blanket of snow on the ground, which only served to amplify the noise from the mountain. I sat in my room listening to it for a few minutes, trying to decide what was happening in the place where bad things happen. I saw my dad's cruiser pull up out the window and went down the stairs to greet him. As I passed my sister's door, I heard her giggling in that annoying teenage girl way, and I cringed. I hoped Kimber would never got like that. Dad! I skidded on the landing just as he opened the door. My dad stomped the snow off his boots and threw open his arms. Sammy! How many years has it been? He joked. It was true I hadn't seen much of my dad lately since he was working so much. Doing what? I didn't know, since this was the quietest, lamest town ever. Mom thought the sheriff was grooming Dad for his job, since Clary was so old, and Dad never really agreed or disagreed with her. He'd only been at the department 7 months after all, and he doubted people in the county would vote for him.
Hey Dad, do you hear that? That, machine-sounding noise?
Yep, I hear it in town every now and then.
Do you know what it is?
I asked the sheriff about it, and he told me the noise comes from private property up in the Ozarks.
Is the property called Borrasca?
I quickly asked. I have no idea. Borrasca? Where'd you hear that? I shrugged. Kids at my school. Well, it's nothing to worry about, Sammy. Probably just some logging equipment.
But is the place called Borrasca? Have you heard that name before?
No, I have not heard that before. Dad pulled his boots off and shrugged off his coat, looking toward the kitchen. I could tell I was losing him.
Have you ever heard of the skinned men?
I asked quickly. Skinned men? Good God, Sam, is your sister telling you these stories? No, but he wasn't listening to me anymore. Whitney! He yelled up the stairs.
No, Dad, Whitney doesn't even talk to me, I repeated.
I heard the door creak open upstairs, and Whitney peered over the railing, phone in hand and an annoyed look on her face. Are you trying to scare your brother? Dad demanded. Dad, no, I said again. Whitney shot me a betrayed look.
Ugh, seriously? As if I'd waste my time.
You aren't telling him stories about skinned men?
No, Dad, I told you I heard it at school, I said.
Whitney gestured to me as if to say, see? All right. Well, you kids need to start getting along. You're family, for Christ's sake. Whitney rolled her eyes, and when Dad walked into the kitchen, she stuck her tongue out at me.
Real mature, Whitney,
I yelled up at her, but she was already gone.
I'll tell Dad about your boyfriend.
Christmas came and went with surprising smoothness at our house.
Whitney and I got everything we'd had on our lists, which was a first for us. The town may be smaller, but Dad's paychecks were clearly better. I wore my new Rams parka on the first day back to school after Christmas break. Kyle fawned over it, and Kimber showed off the blue pearl necklace her mom had gotten her for Christmas. Kyle and I feigned interest, but did it poorly. Kimber knew, but just seemed happy we cared enough to fake it. As we said goodbye to Kyle for the morning, Kimber was suddenly slammed from the side. Kyle caught her before she fell, and I spun around angrily to see dark-haired girl, whose name I'd learned was Phoebe Dranger, laughing and walking away from us with the round-faced girl. "You're bad people who make poor life choices!" Kyle yelled at them. "When I'm your boss someday, I'll make you clean bathrooms!" "Yeah, and if Kyle's your boss, you know you messed up," I added. Kyle and I high-fived and turned to Kimber, but she wasn't sharing in our victory. She was trying to hide the tears on her face. "Don't sweat those girls, Kimber. Nobody likes them. People are just nice to them because they're related to the Prescotts." Kyle tried to give her an awkward pat on the back, but Kimber turned away from him and ran in the opposite direction. "I hate those girls. Like, I really hate them," I said. "I know. They're bitches," Kyle answered, mouthing the last word as he looked over his shoulder for any lurking adults. "Well, I'd better get to class and make sure they don't try to talk to her again. There's an assembly this morning. No class until after lunch." "Seriously? That's awesome. Do we have to sit by class?" "Not usually, but we better get there quick so we can get seats at the back," Kyle said as we started walking. "What's the assembly for?" I asked. "It's either DARE or the History Society presentation." "What's DARE?" "You know, DARE, as in don't you dare do drugs or you're grounded until you're dead." "Oh, I hope it's the history thing then." We found Kimber already in the auditorium. She had collected herself and saved us both seats at the back of the room. She waved us over just as the puffy, stern Mrs. DeVerde walked onto the stage. "Hello, 4th grade students. This morning we have a special presentation for you from the Historic Preservation Society of Drisking. If you have any questions during the course of the lecture, please raise your hand." "Like that'll happen," Kyle laughed. "Now, I'd like to introduce you to Mr. Wyatt Dowding, Miss Catherine Scanlon, and of course, Mr. James Prescott." "What? Jimmy Prescott and not his dad? That's so weird," Kimber whispered. "Dude, Thomas Prescott has done this presentation every year for like 20 years, Kyle said. "It's definitely weird." "It's not weird," whispered Mike Sutton from behind us. He leaned forward. "Tom Prescott went crazy like a year ago. He didn't do the presentation last year when my sister was here either." "I don't like Jimmy Prescott." Kimber shook her head. "He gives me the heebie-jeebies. His dad is so much nicer. He's like a grandpa." The presentation was slow and boring. Mr. Dowding and Miss Scanlon talked about the first settlers here, the Cherokee and the Trail of Tears. They talked about Alexander Drisking's discovery of a motherlode of ore in the mountains and settling here with his family to mine and refine the iron. Then James Prescott took the stage from there to tell the story of his family's early journey to the town and their role in the revitalization of Drisking itself in the late 50s. The last part was the most interesting of it all, and I found Jimmy Prescott to be infallibly charismatic and entertaining. I was so busy laughing at his jokes and hanging on his every word that by the end of his presentation I realized I'd actually learned quite a bit. So much so that I was interested enough to ask a question, which Kyle warned was committing social suicide. Mr. Prescott scanned the room and answered a few other questions before he finally got to me at the back. "Yes, you in the back." Mr. Prescott, why did the mines close? Like, what happened?" I asked. "Very good question, young man. What did you say your name was?" Sam. Walker." "Ah, I believe I met your father the other day at the sheriff's office. Welcome to Drisking. As for your questions, most of the mines were closed in 1951 after a long period of unprofitability. The mountain had simply run out of iron ore. The mills and refineries were abandoned and the town suffered for years. The miners and their families moved away, Stores went out of business, schools closed, and Driskin became a ghost town. That would have been the end of it if it weren't for stubborn families like mine who refused to leave. We refused to give up the town, and after many, many years of hard work, Driskin became the picturesque little haven in the Ozarks that it is today. I hope that answers your question. I sat back down, and Kyle shook his head at me. Bro. The assembly suffered through another 15 minutes of awkward Q&A until Mrs. DeVerde finally cut us loose. We were released into the cafeteria to wait for the lunch lines to open. Kyle, Kimber, and I sat in our usual corner. That was so boring, Kyle whined. When are they going to figure out that no one cares about Driskin's history? Seriously, I fell asleep like 3 times. Kimber nudged me. Sam seemed to care, she teased. I just wanted to know about the mines. Mines are creepy, that's all. Yeah, but all our mines were blown up. You can't go in them anymore, Kyle said. Blown up? I asked. Kimber nodded. Some kids died after going into the mines, so the city set off some controlled blasts to implode the caverns. At least that's what my mom said. They messed up though, and I heard they blew up the water table or poisoned it or something. Wait, how do you know that? Kyle asked. Kimber shrugged. I heard my dad talking about it. Did they use C4 or something? I guess. So, like, we all drink the water, so we all have C4 in our bodies, and we could explode at any minute? Kyle said excitedly. Do you think that's what happened to all the missing people? I asked him. Just sitting there one day and boom! Yeah, dude. Kyle grabbed my shoulders. And that's where the skinned men come from. I made the international symbol of mind blown, and we laughed hysterically. You guys are dumb, Kimber rolled her eyes, but then she laughed when Kyle fell on the floor pretending he was exploding. I remember thinking in that moment that I was happy here in Driskin, Missouri, with these 2 people. Happier than I'd ever been anywhere else. It was the last truly happy moment I ever had. Less than an hour later, Mr. Diamond's phone rang, and he exchanged a few quiet words with the person on the other end, his eyes flicking to and from my desk. It was hard to be surprised then, when he hung up and asked me to come to the front. When I got there, he told me my mom was waiting for me in the office, and I was going home for the day. I traded a confused and worried look with Kimber, and then packed up my backpack and went to the office. When I got there, my mom was crying. We drove home in strained silence. I was too afraid to ask what was wrong. Mom parked the car a block from our house, which was blocked in by several police cars. When an explanation didn't come, I broke the silence myself. Is it Dad? I asked quietly, holding back tears. No, honey. Dad is fine, she whispered. Then what happened? Whitney never made it to school this morning. Her voice broke over my sister's name. Oh, no, Mom, I think she ditched, I said quickly. I saw her leave this morning, and it was really early, like 6, and she was with her friends, Pete Whittaker and that kid Taylor. We know all about that, Sam. But they made it to school and Whitney wasn't with them. They said she wanted to stop by the Circle K near Driskin High, so they left her there, and no one has seen her since. Well, my brain struggled to come up with an explanation. Maybe she's ditching. No, honey. My mom put the car back in drive and drove up to our house, parking behind a police cruiser. The police, as well as your father, think that Whitney is with Jay. But she has a new boyfriend here. We found all her books on the floor of her room this morning, and half her clothes gone along with some cash of your dad's. But right now, we think she hitched a ride to St. Louis and that she's with Jay. The sheriff's office is trying to contact the boy's parents now. Whitney run away? Anyone who knew my sister knew she was prone to dramatics and empty threats. Plus, she was dating Chris Whittaker's older brother Pete. I was sure of it. We walked up the steps and into a house filled with stale coffee and quiet murmurs. I tried to remember if Whitney herself had ever actually confirmed she was dating Pete, but I drew a blank. When we walked into the kitchen, I saw my father sitting at the table, staring at phone records head in hand. He looked up when I came into the room and gave me a weak smile. "Hey, buddy." "Dad, I have to tell you something." I felt a heavy hand on my shoulder and turned to look up at a solemn Sheriff Clary. "Everything and anything you might know, son, no matter how trivial you think it is." I nodded and sat down at the table with my dad as my mom handed the big man a cup of coffee. "Here you go, Sheriff," she said weakly. "Please, Mrs. Walker, call me Killian." My mother nodded and retreated back into a darkened corner to talk quietly with Sheriff Clary's wife, Grace. "What do you know, Sam?" my dad asked, as he rested his chin on his hands in a mock symbol of prayer, as though I may deliver him from his suffering. "Well, I heard Whitney had a boyfriend, that guy, Pete Whittaker, that she's been hanging out with, and I saw them and Taylor Dranger leave this morning before me." "What time did they leave?" asked the sheriff. "I don't know, like before 6? He nodded. "That matches the statements of Taylor Dranger and the Whittaker boy." My father's head sunk lower into his hands, and I knew I'd let him down. "But," I rushed, "I don't think she went back to St. Louis because she was dating Pete, and I don't think she wanted to be with her boyfriend back home anymore." "I understand that, son, but a teenage girl's mind is a complicated thing. My officers are trying to get a hold of the boyfriend's family back in St. Louis." Clary nodded to my father. "Now why don't you head up to your room and let us work, Samuel?" I looked up at him in surprise. "What? No, I want to stay down here. I can help." "No, son. There's nothing more you can do here. You've been a good brother. Now let us handle this." "But I can help." "You already have." "Dad!" I looked over at my dad with begging eyes. "Go to your room, Sam," he said quietly after a moment. I balked. "Dad!" "Now." I was so angry I did the only thing that I could to make my rage known. I stomped upstairs, slammed the door, and then sat on my bed in disbelief. The tears came then, and I laid there feeling helpless, worthless, and scared for my sister. I thought about all the places Whitney could be. Was she scared? Was she alone? Was she dead? When the sun began to set, I finally got out of bed and went to check my email. I was expecting lots of messages from Kimber and Kyle, but there was only one. Did she go to the treehouse? I sat, staring at the computer screen for almost a minute. Kimber's words from last fall echoed in my brain. "If you enter the treehouse without the proper ceremony, you'll disappear, and then you'll die." I didn't buy that Whitney had gone to Circle K that morning, and I especially didn't believe that she'd hitchhiked out of town. Nothing they were saying downstairs made any sense if you knew my sister. But maybe this did. Maybe she and her boyfriend went to the treehouse to make out or something, and maybe he'd left her there. Maybe she'd gotten lost, or maybe the skinned men had found her. That was the worst thought of all. I didn't need to sneak out because the police were too busy with my parents to care about me anyway. I snuck my bike out of the garage and rode the 3 miles to West Rim Prescott Ore Trail. When I got there, I saw 2 bikes already locked at the signpost, and my 2 best friends sitting in the snow next to them. "I knew you'd come," Kyle said, when I pulled my bike up, and Kimber ran up to hug me. "I'm so sorry, Sam." There was really nothing for me to say, and they didn't push. Kimber took my arm, and we started up the trail. The silence between us was stretched, but comfortable. We trudged through the snow, and all the while I searched for the telltale footprints of others, but the snow was coming too fast. The hike up the mountain was harder and wetter than what we'd come in the fall, and when Abercott Fort finally came into view over the ridge, it was a welcome sight. The sun was getting low, and we hadn't brought flashlights. I fell as I ran up to the tree, calling my sister's name to the quiet wild. Kyle was right behind me and leapt impressively onto the rope ladder, climbing quickly up the planks. I kept calling Whitney's name, waiting for Kyle to yell that he'd found her, or that there was at least some sign of her. And then I heard Kimber quietly say my name from where she stood at the triple tree. I ran over and tried to follow her eyes to confirm what I already knew was there. And then I found it, freshly carved near the top. Whitney W. My breath froze in my chest, and my vision blurred with unwelcome tears. As the sun took its last desperate breath before plunging into the deep of the horizon, a deafening metallic whirl sang out from the wilderness and spilled down the mountainside.
Underneath the triple tree, there is a man who waits for me, and should I go or should I stay, my fate's the same, either way. Good morning. The words faded back into the ether, and I awoke with a start. Jimmy Prescott was lounging against the wall near the door, an amused yet disapproving look on his face. Shit, sorry, Mr. Prescott. I didn't hear you come in. You know, I worked here when I was a kid, too. I installed the bell on the door for this very reason. Didn't seem to wake you up, though. He laughed. I mumbled another apology and idly straightened a stack of business cards in front of me. Late night? Kinda. Very. Hope you weren't out at the bonfires with all the other underage drinkers. No, sir. Yup. Good. Anyway, I'm just here for my lunch. I'll take a Parmesan chicken with avocado on rye. Yes, sir. Happy that the conversation was over, I walked over to the sandwich counter and unwound the twisty tie from the rye bread. Jimmy Prescott stepped back from the counter and idly studied the pictures on the wall, though he'd seen them 1,000 times before. More of the photos were of the Prescott family, taken over the last century. I'd always thought it odd decor, but then the shop was named after them after all. Is Mira here? Prescott asked as I wrapped up his sandwich. She's in the back. Ah, I thought she'd still be in St. Louis. Well, when you're finished, would you mind getting her for me? Shit. Yes, sir. I handed him his sandwich and went to the back to find Mira. She was in the office, furiously punching the keys on her accounting calculator. Mira? Jimmy Prescott is out front. He wants to talk to you. She turned and gave me a dubious look. Did he say what about? I shook my head. Okay, she sighed. You can go home for the day, Sam. But are you sure? I still had 3 hours on the clock. He's the only customer we've had since we opened. Don't worry, I'll pay you for a whole day, kiddo. Thanks, Mira. Good luck, I guess. I gave her a sympathetic shrug, and she patted my arm. I didn't know how she did it. Mira was perhaps the most burdened and stressed out woman in all of Drisking, but she never failed to be unbelievably kind. There was a hopelessness about her, a sadness that she hid very well. I left the store out the back door so I wouldn't have to see Jimmy Prescott again. His weird, yellowed amber eyes always set me on edge. Not to mention he was a total tool. I hopped in my car and texted Kyle that I was off work. He answered immediately, told me to meet him. I happily whipped my apron off over my head and threw the car into reverse. Crystal Lake was my favorite place in all of Drisking. I had to park almost a mile away, since the lake was so packed. I eventually found Kyle and Kimber sitting on a rock that jutted out over the beach. Kimber was sunbathing in a blue floral bikini, and Kyle was wearing his "no one can tell where my eyes are" looking sunglasses. What did I miss? I asked, sitting down next to Kimber. Not much, she answered, stretching and sitting up. Just more beer. She dug into the cooler behind her and tried to hand me a Blue Moon. Ugh, no, I waved it away. Got any Excedrin? Oh, no. Kimber gave me her I'm sorry pout. Okay then, I'll just take those sunglasses. I held my hand out to Kyle, who looked back at it in horror. What? No, fuck off. Oh, come on, Kyle, give me your sunglasses. Sam didn't get to sleep off his hangover like we did. I smiled at Kyle and he tightened his lips. We both knew exactly what I was doing. Kimber stroked Kyle's arm in encouragement. Please, she asked. Fine, he said, and shoved his blue blockers at me. I put them on and sat back, turning my head to watch the girls on the beach below. Phoebe Dranger, dark-haired girl, was there lying on a towel next to Roundface and giggling. It still seemed unnatural to me to see the two of them off without Rudenose. The three had been inseparable, working as fluidly together as the gears in a watch, until Christy had fallen in love with some college kid and run away. So why'd you get out of work early anyway? Kyle asked. Prescott came in. You, Kimber squirmed. He totally freaks me out. He's been staring at me since, like, 5th grade. Next time he stares at you, let me know. I'll knock him the fuck out. Kyle had always been protective over Kimber, but ever since they'd started dating, it had gotten 10 times more unbearable. Kimber winked at him. So what did he want, Sam? He wanted to talk to Mira, probably about the sandwich shop. You mean about how no one goes there and the business should have closed years ago, but it won't because the Prescotts are stubborn and vain? Kyle asked. Yeah, probably. I mean, she looked pretty worried. I can count on one hand how many sandwiches I've sold in the past month. Ouch, Kimber grimaced. Yeah, I'm pretty sure she's going to get chewed out. I really don't like that guy. I thought about the squirmy, yellow-eyed freak yelling at sweet little Mira, and it made my blood boil. You should have met his dad, Kyle snorted. He was a piece of work. His dad? Yeah, Tom Prescott, Kimber said. The family put him in a home a few towns over. Why is he in a home? I heard he got dementia, and he was embarrassing the family in public, Kyle said. I heard that too. Kimber brushed her long curls off of her shoulders. I always liked Tom Prescott. It was a pretty shitty thing to do. Hey, kids! We turned in unison to see Phil Saunders come stomping out of the bushes behind us with Mike Sutton following behind. So this is where the cool people hang out, high above the kingdom on Pride Rock. Sup, Mike? Kyle said, ignoring Phil, whom he disliked ever since Phil had briefly dated Kimber. Phil was either unaware of or uninterested in Kyle's feelings. Of course, that may also have been because Phil was stoned out of his mind most of the time, and now was no exception. They sat down next to us, and Mike offered me his pipe. Want to hit it? I did want to hit it, and pretty badly, too. I reached up to grab it, but Phil swatted my hand away. Careful, guy. You don't want to get the sheriff's son high. For fuck's sake, Mike. Mike nodded knowingly and shoved the pipe back into his pocket. I scowled. Really? Sorry, Sammy. Hell, the only reason I'm even smoking around you is because today is my cousin's death anniversary, and I don't give a shit about anything else. Your cousin Hannah? Kimber asked with a sympathetic look. Yep, 5 years she's been gone. Too many people disappear in these woods, man, Mike said as he exhaled a cloud of smoke. Yeah, man, Phil nodded. You know, sometimes, when I'm high, I can see them all. And I feel like I know the answer to the mystery, man. Like I'm so close to solving it. It's just something I can see. Like they're all puzzle pieces, and in my mind I see the puzzle put together, but I can't tell what the picture is of, you know? You're fucking high, Saunders, Kyle said. We all are, man. We all are. Everyone in this town is drinking the fucking Kool-Aid. Kimber raised an eyebrow at him, but said nothing. Everyone except the dead ones. I can see what they looked like before they went into the ground. Or is it the grounder? Shit, I don't know, man, Mike said into the space in front of him. Yeah, I see all those people. Hannah, Paige, Jason Metley. Hell, I even see your sister, Walker. Kyle, who I knew had been monitoring the conversation for mention of this very thing, sprang to his feet and opened his mouth to yell at Phil. Nah, Whitney Walker ran to St. Louis, remember? Mike said. I saw Kyle and Kimber exchange a quick look as I tried to remain impassive from behind the blue blockers. That true, man? Phil asked, and there it was. I knew Kyle and Kimber had always wondered what I thought about Whitney, and if I'd ever accepted the official statement that she and Jay had run away together. They were kind enough not to bring it up, but I knew they wanted to know what I believed, what I thought really happened. I loved them both, and I wanted to talk to them about it, but I just couldn't. Everyone thought that I had spent the last 7 years quietly grieving and that I'd put the incident behind me. At least, that's what I'd tried to show them. The truth was that I'd never given up on Whitney. I'd waited years for Jay to show up on social media, and when I finally found him last year, I'd been devastated. I'd always hoped the official report was right, and that Whitney was somewhere far away from here, alive and happy with Jay Bauer. But his MySpace page showed a thriving teenager, still living at home with his parents, his ex-girlfriend Whitney the furthest thing from his mind. When I'd brought the evidence to my dad, he read the pages I'd printed off and then shut the door to his office with me on the other side. I heard him crying in there for hours as I waited for him to reopen the case and bring the smackdown on the Butler County Sheriff's Department. But justice had never come. We never mentioned Jay Bauer again. For whatever reason, I never told Kyle and Kimber about any of that. Maybe it was because I was worried they'd blow it off like my dad had. Or maybe, and far more likely, I didn't want them to know how obsessed I'd become with Borrasca and the Skinned Men. I knew, as assuredly as the sun would rise tomorrow, that Whitney's death had happened at there, just like all the others who'd gone to the Triple Tree. I was suddenly very aware of 4 pairs of eyes staring at me. Yeah, it's true. She ran off with this guy Jay from our hometown, I answered. That was enough for Kyle. Alright guys, seriously, he's the sheriff's kid. What do you think is going to happen if he gets caught with weed? The little man is right, Phil. Let's bounce. I don't need any more trouble with the cops around here, Mike said. Later, Walker, Kimber, little man. Phil stood up, brushed off his pants, and jumped from the boulder onto the sandy beach below. He sprayed sand all over a couple of freshman girls who squealed and called him an unthoughtful ass. Phil tipped his invisible hat to them and said, "Oh, ladies," before walking off. Mike followed him down, and as I watched them make their way down the beach, I became aware of the conversation going on behind me. I didn't say I wanted to go, I said I had to go, Kimber said. It's only 2 o'clock, and it's Sunday. I know, but my parents have been fighting a lot lately, and I don't want to leave my mom alone too long. I thought she was doing better. A little, but she's still depressed, Kyle. Do you want to stay over at my place tonight? Kimber's voice dropped into a whisper. I don't think I'm ready for that yet. What? No, wait, that's not what I meant. I'd sleep on the pullout in the basement, and you would have my room. Very awkward silence. My parents love you, you know, he added. Kimber laughed. I know. I just want to be there for my mom right now. But thank you, sweetie. And then the absolutely disgusting sound of my best friends kissing. I would never get used to it. Ugh, on that note, I'm out of here too. I stood up and gave them both a shaming look. Oh, come on, Sam, don't be jealous. We'll find you a girlfriend someday, Kyle joked. I really don't need your help with that, I muttered, glancing down the beach to where Emmeline Adler was sunbathing. I'll see you guys tomorrow. Last week of school, Kimber yelled at my retreating back. Thank God. Tomorrow was the last Monday of the school year, and while I should have been thankful my sophomore year was ending, I wasn't. The summer meant no distractions, more time to think, and even more hours of boredom at Prescott Artisan Sandwiches. But I wasn't looking forward to tomorrow for another reason. Besides it being Monday, it was also sophomore ditch day. My dad had caught on to that several weeks ago and warned me to set a good example and go to school that day. Sometimes I really hated being the son of a cop. Kimber and Kyle were sympathetic and had offered to share in my misery. I had, of course, said yes, much to Kyle's sadness. As I'd expected, my dad was waiting for me when I got home. We shared a brief, strained conversation about our respective days, and then he finally got to it. "Remember, Sammy, we're cracking down on truancy this year. I want to see you at school tomorrow." "Yeah, I got it, Dad. And I hope I won't have to write a ticket to Kyle either." I sighed. "It's just a tradition. Even the teachers sort of encourage it. On Friday, they said, 'I don't care what they said, Sam. Besides the fact that I'm the sheriff, I'm also your father, and I want my son in school.'" I laughed and shook my head. What a joke. I can't control what Kyle does. Fair enough, but you can control what you do. I said nothing, and Dad sighed. "It's almost over, Sam. Just get through these last 5 days, and you can be done with school for a few months." "Fine." I walked out of the kitchen, rudely ending the conversation. I climbed the stairs and passed by Whitney's door on the way to my room. The light was on, and silence was behind it. I knew my mother was in there. She was always in there, doing God knows what. I walked to my own room, shut the door behind me, and locked it. The next day at school ended up being more embarrassing than anything else. There were a few other people that hadn't skipped, maybe a total of 10 of us, and the looks they shot at me made it clear that my dad was the reason they were here. Kimber, great friend that she was, happily went to her classes like it was a normal day. Kyle attended all of my classes with me. The teachers, who had been looking forward to an easy day, couldn't have cared less. Just before lunch, an officer came around to all the classrooms and asked for copies of the attendance sheets. Dad really wasn't kidding about cracking down this year. I was going to get shit from people all summer. At lunch, Kyle and I went out to my car to smoke. Usually we were hidden by dozens of large pickup trucks, but today we were out in the open and vulnerable. I moved the car back to a shady corner of the parking lot, and Kyle pulled out his bowl. "Did you text Kimber?" I asked him while he hit it. "Yep," he said through tight lips, as he let the smoke sit in his lungs and then blew it all out over my dashboard. "She went home around 4th period. She said her mom called her and she was going home to take care of her. I don't know, man." "Doesn't her mom hate you?" I asked, taking my turn with the bowl. "Yeah, I mean, that's a fairly new development ever since Kimber and I started dating. But I'm pretty sure she's always hated me and just hid it better before. And that she's all depressed and whatever, she doesn't give a shit." It was hard to picture anyone hating Kyle. Why can't Kimber's dad take care of her? I don't know. I hit the pipe again. "Hey man, let's not even go back today," Kyle said. "You think?" I asked. "Yeah, I mean, you put in 4 periods. You've been a good son. And Officer Dickass already came around and collected the attendance sheets." "Dickass? Really? You're better than that, man." "Officer Ass Dick? You're fucking baked, Kyle. Seriously, man, let's go." I thought about it a second. Kyle was right. I'd done my duty as a son, and if I left now, I'd have enough time to go to GameStop before work. Fuck it. I turned on the ignition. Kyle sat up in his chair and rolled down the window to clear out the smoke. "Hey man, can you drop me by Kimber's?" "Sure, but how are you going to get home?" "Can you come get me after work?" "What if her mom throws you out again?" Kyle rolled his eyes. That was one time. "Why can't I just drop you at home and you can take your own car? It needs new tires." New tires, of course. What Kyle really meant was that his insurance had lapsed and he didn't have any money for gas anyway. He'd bought the car last summer after working double shifts at the convenience store for half a year. It was an okay car, newer, but I knew he'd only wanted it to impress Kimber, something he'd vehemently denied. Had it worked? Not in my opinion. They'd started dating in the fall, and Kyle quit his job to spend more time with her. Kimber didn't seem like the kind of girl to be impressed by a Pontiac Bonneville, but Kyle was convinced that was how he'd won her over. I was sure all the car had really done was give him the confidence to ask her out. And now that its part in their romance ended, the car sat in the garage of the Landy home collecting dust instead of memories. GameStop didn't have what I wanted, and neither did Driskin Games and Media. Since I had nothing else to do, I decided to show up to work early and hope that Mira would let me leave early too. I parked in front and walked in the door, unsurprised to see no one at the front counter. There were only 3 of us that worked at the shop, and sadly I never got to see the other girl, Emmeline, who worked on the days I didn't. This was disappointing to me, since she was half the reason I'd applied there in the first place. I went into the back to tell Mira I was there, and found her slumped over her desk on a pile of receipts and paperwork. This wasn't an unusual way to find Mira, but something seemed different today. I immediately felt a disturbance in the force, but before I could run away, she turned toward me and I saw I was right to flee. Mira was crying. I'm sorry, she said quickly, wiping her eyes. Is it 4 already? No, it's 2:15. I just thought maybe if I came in early. Oh, right, it's your ditch day. Mira wiped her eyes, only to have them fill with tears again. I don't understand, Sam. This store had been operating in the red ever since I was hired to manage it. What am I doing wrong? I don't know, I offered lamely, the instinct to escape never stronger. No one comes in here, ever, and Mr. Prescott refuses to let me put up signs to advertise. He says they're unsightly, but how does he expect me to pull in business? I need this job, Sam. God, I must have looked like a frightened deer, because when Mira glanced over at me, she seemed to suddenly collect herself. Go ahead and go out into the front. I'll do your time card. She didn't have to tell me twice. I really liked Mira, but I hated seeing her like this. The front didn't end up being much better. I could hear Mira crying over the store's dated music track. Her sobs went from painfully audible to muffled whispers. After half an hour, I decided I had to do something. Since I was entirely unequipped to deal with an adult woman's emotions, I decided to call Mira's husband, Owen. He was thankfully at home and answered on the second ring. I'll be right there. I breathed a sigh of relief when I heard a car pull up outside and saw the tall, girthy Owen get out of it. He walked in during a quiet lull in his wife's breakdown. I'm sorry to call you at home, Mr. Daly. I just didn't know what else to do. That's okay, Sam. You did the right thing. He looked tired, and I could tell this situation wasn't new to him. Is she okay? I mean, will she be okay? Oh, yeah. He nodded. We're just going through some things. Oh, Mira said the store is going bankrupt too. I winced as soon as the words were out of my mouth. Yeah, Owen ran a hand through his hair. That's part of it. Although I don't think Jim is going to let that happen. Mira is more upset about... He sighed. Has Mira told you about her, appointments? No. Well, we've been trying to get pregnant for years. Long, painful years. It's just so goddamn important for her to have a baby. And she blames me for our problems. He walked around the room, staring at the pictures, not really talking to me anymore. I understand why it's important to her, I just don't understand the obsession with it, Because she's the last one in her family? Because she's the last McCaskey on the planet? I mean, does she even realize that our baby wouldn't be a McCaskey? He'd be a Daly. I tell you, Sam, never marry a woman with a crazy father and 4 dead uncles. They develop these obsessions with lineage and... 4 dead uncles? What? Oh, yeah. The famous ones. The 4 brothers who died in the Driskin mines? Well, that only left her dad, and her parents were only able to conceive her, which leaves her as the last McCaskey, and hope for the family line. So of course you see how this is all my fault. I looked at him blankly, and he sighed. I'm sorry, kid. These aren't your problems, and they're way over your pay grade anyway. I'm just very stressed out these days. Our fertility issues and Mira's absolute abhorrence to our only other option, But how did they die? I was desperate to talk about anything else, and the story of Mira's uncles interested me. The McCaskey boys? I don't really know. They died on the mountain somewhere. Oh,
Well, have you heard of the Skinned Men?
Skinned men?
Yeah.
I don't think so.
What about Borrasca?
Owen Daly squeezed his eyes shut and pushed in on his temples with his fingers. What? What does a Borrasca have to do with anything?
Owen?
Mira's voice squeaked from the doorway.
Oh, baby, are you okay? Sam called the house. I want to do it.
You do?
Owen asked dubiously. I called him. His eyes flicker over to me, and I immediately looked away. Another conversation I didn't want to be a part of.
Sam, why don't you take off for the day? Mira and I will handle things here.
Okay, I mumbled and bolted for the door. Once I was in my car and backing away, I called Kyle. Dude, fucking weird shit is going down in this town. What happened? I can't explain it over the phone. Where are you at?
I'm at Kimber's. Are you off work?
Yeah, I'm coming to get you. By at Kimber's, Kyle meant sitting on the curb in front of the house, kicked off the property again. When I pulled up, Kimber came out and met us at the curb. I'm so sorry, Kyle, she said. She's really upset today. She wouldn't even let me leave the house to sit with you. It's okay, he said. Don't worry about me. I just want to make sure you and your mom are okay. We're okay, and my dad will be home soon. Text us when he gets home, and we'll come get you, I said. I wish I could. I'm babysitting tonight until 7:30. Maybe after that? Sure. Kyle and Kimber hugged goodbye, and then Kimber rushed back to her house as something crashed inside.
So what's going on?
Kyle asked, taking a drink of a warm Dr. Pepper sitting in my cup holder. You're still wearing your apron, you know. Mira had a breakdown, I said, peeling it off. Really? What happened? I told Kyle the full story, giving particular attention to the 4 uncles.
Yeah, the McCaskies. I heard of them. Didn't know Mira was one, though. I thought they were all dead.
Yeah, she's the last one. So, do you think the McCaskey deaths have anything to do with the other disappearances? It had been a while since I'd mentioned anything about Borrasca, and Kyle choked a little on the Dr. Pepper.
I don't know, man. I mean, maybe if the disappearances started around the same time?
How can we find that out?
Maybe the cops? There have to be police reports.
Okay, but what if I couldn't ask my dad?
Kyle shook his head. I don't know then.
What about, records? The Historical Society people, maybe?
Oh, yeah, he said, nodding. We can try them. They're over on 2nd. They share an office with the Drisking Arts and Antiques. I made a U-turn and started back toward town. Hey, why are we doing this? I'd known the question was coming. I'd hoped to have more answers myself before I had to give him one.
Just
Whitney, was all I could say. Kyle didn't ask anything more. The Historic Preservation Society of Drisking was at the back of the building, and we had to walk through the antiques shop as the owner, Mr. Dranger, eyed us warily. At the end of a short hallway, we found a small room with 2 desks pushed together. One was empty, and the other was stacked high with books and folders of loose paper. We could hear someone typing behind the stacks. I cleared my throat. Hello? Hello? A small woman popped out from behind the desk. I recognized her as the same woman who had given us a lecture in 5th grade. Hello, how can I help you boys? She asked, walking out to greet us. Yeah, I have a few questions about Drisking's history, I guess? Oh, great. Is this for an end-of-year report? Have a seat, boys. She gestured to the empty chair sitting behind the other desk. I nodded at Kyle and he sat down, looking uneasy. Yeah, it's for an essay we have to write. Hey, I think you gave a lecture to us 7 years ago, at school. Oh yes, I give that lecture every year with Mr. Prescott. She smiled. Yeah, it was you and one other guy too. A bald guy, Kyle said, shifting uncomfortably in the wooden chair.
Yes, that was my fiancé, Wyatt Dowding. He passed several years ago.
Oh, Kyle said. So, Miss
Scanlon, but you can call me Catherine, she said.
Catherine, I tried. I hated calling adults by their first names.
We want to know about the McCaskey kids.
Ooh, Catherine said, shaking her head.
A dark part of history there, but still history nonetheless.
Yeah, so when did that happen, and how did they die? Kyle added.
Well, they didn't die. I mean, they certainly perished in the mines, but their bodies were never recovered, so we don't know the answer to that. I would think dehydration, starvation, and exhaustion killed them within days of getting lost down there. And to your second question, that was 1953, I believe.
And the mines closed that year?
Well, actually, the mines officially closed the year after. There was a legal spat between the city and the Prescott family, who wanted to leave the mines open until the bodies were found. The city won and the mines were condemned.
Wait, why did the Prescotts care?
Don't you want to write this down?
Catherine asked. Kyle tapped his head twice with his finger. Catherine shrugged and continued.
Well, the Prescott and the McCaskey family were closely related. Tom Prescott was paying teams of unemployed miners to go down in the mines and search for the bodies. The city had had enough of it. The mountain was unstable, and they didn't want any more deaths. The mines had been abandoned years before and were structurally unsafe. After the city banned the recovery teams from the mines, members of the Prescott family started going down there themselves. Finally, the city had had enough and they had the mines collapsed.
With bombs? Kyle asked.
Well, with explosives, and that's what led to the incident. By this time, the mines had been unprofitable for a few years and the city was quite broke. They hired a less than reputable company to collapse the mines and, well, when they set off the explosives, they accidentally broke into Drisking's water table. The city went into debt trying to purify the water of silt and iron ore. It wasn't until 2 years later that things started getting better, thanks to the Prescotts, who truly did revitalize Drisking.
Kyle's phone chirped, and he pulled it out of his pocket. It's Kimber. She wants us to come over. Okay. Thanks, Miss Scanlon. Catherine.
Sure. If you have any other questions, feel free to come by. We're almost always open during the day. Oh, or you can email me.
She dug into her jacket pocket and pulled out a loose business card. It was creased and had a dusty smudge on it. Thanks. So what do you think? Kyle asked when we got in the car. I don't know. It's weird, isn't it? Why would the Prescotts give a shit if the town suffers after they refuse to help him find their family and were actively working against them? Maybe they forgave and forgot? Kyle shrugged. Does Jimmy Prescott seem like a guy to forgive and forget to you? Ugh, no. And his dad is even worse. Exactly. Maybe we should turn here. Sorry, Kimber's still babysitting and she's over on Amherst. When we pulled up, Kimber was out in the front yard with 2 young boys who were playing in the driveway. She was holding a sleeping baby and waving to us. We parked in the driveway and she introduced us to the 2 older kids. They gave us shy hellos and then ran off to continue their game. Once they'd left, we explained everything that had happened to Kimber while she listened and rocked the baby in her arms.
Sam is right. That doesn't make sense. But why are we even concerned about something that happened decades ago?
Whitney, Kyle said, so I didn't have to. A flash of surprise crossed Kimber's face and she walked over to put the baby down in his playpen. Then she walked back and pulled me into one of her famous, super comforting, not at all awkward hugs. When she released me, she began to pace around the driveway.
Okay, so we think Whitney somehow got involved in all of this, and you're right. If we want to figure this out, we need to start at the beginning. Phil is right. Every mystery in this town is one piece of a larger puzzle. It's all related.
She stopped and looked over at us. We need to go to the source if we want answers.
Yeah, that's not a bad idea, Kyle agreed. I know he likes to hang out in the hideaway and get drunk with ex-Sheriff Clary. No, Kyle, not Jimmy. His dad.
Tom?
He's so crazy they put him in a home. He's the horse's mouth, though, isn't he? Jimmy isn't likely to know half as much as his dad.
But, as Kyle and Kimber argued, I watched the kids chase each other around the tree in their front yard. There seemed to be something carved in the bark. Words, not unlike the triple tree at Abercott Fort. I was too far away to read what it said.
He got you, he got you,
I heard the youngest one call to his brother.
The skinned man got you, now you have to die. Nuh-uh, Peter, I was touching the tree. No, you weren't, you're a liar. One of them got you, and now you have to meet the shiny gentleman. No, I don't. Kimber, Josh is cheating.
I shuddered and turned away from them. Where's the nut house? I interrupted them. Is it close?
It's not a nut house. It's more like a hospice, Kimber chided. The rumor I've heard is that he's at Golden Elm, and that's in Cape Girardeau.
That's about 40 minutes away, Kyle said and pulled out his phone. I'll check the visiting hours for Tuesdays. Sam, do you work tomorrow? I work every day, but I'll get out of it, I promised. Okay, cool. Let's plan to leave after school. The following day dragged on like any last Tuesday of the school year. Most people talked about what they did with their ditch day or complained about a cop showing up at their house to issue them a ticket while sliding less than pleased looks at me. When the final bell rang at 3:30, I grabbed my bag and booked it out to my car. Kyle and Kimber were already waiting for me. The drive took longer than we expected when I got lost in Cape Girardeau. The town was bigger than Drisking, and the streets weren't laid out with any sort of planning or logic. By the time we arrived at Golden Elm, we only had 20 minutes left for visiting hours.
We're here to see Mr. Thomas Prescott?
Kimber told the nurse at the front desk. We let her do the talking since she had a disarming, old-fashioned charm about her that put people in a friendly mood.
Old Tom? Wow, he hasn't had a visitor since Christmas when his son came up. Sign the check-in sheet and take a visitor sticker. Your family, then? Do you know where his room is?
The nurse arched a thin, suspicious eyebrow.
I'm sorry, we don't.
Kimber apologized.
My mother has been asking me to check in on my great-uncle while she's away doing Doctors Without Borders. I should have gotten more information from her, but, she only has so many minutes to call home. Oh, of course, dear. Let me get someone to escort you.
An orderly led us to Tom Prescott's room, which we found empty. He pointed down the hall and said, he likes to read in the sunroom. We walked down the hall and found an old, thin man sitting alone and whispering to himself. He was sitting at a table in front of a backgammon board, moving chess pieces around it.
Tom Prescott?
Kimber said, smiling. He didn't look up, and I wondered if he'd heard her at all. Kimber took a deep breath to try again, but the old man suddenly slammed his fist on the table.
I'm him, goddammit. I'm Mr. Thomas Prescott. Don't call me Tom. People's kids used to have more respect.
I'm sorry, sir, Kimber said gently as she sat down in the chair opposite to him.
You kids have no respect. Do you even know who I am? It's my son that's done it. That boy's mama should have whipped him, but she was soft, and now he's running around my town spreading his vulgarity and disrespect.
Our apologies, Mr. Prescott. We never meant to be disrespectful. We greatly admire you. You're the man who built our town into what it is today. Everyone remembers that. Drisking was suffering and the town was dying, and then you fixed it. We know that.
I did what I had to do, the old man grumbled. It was my town. It still is. Who are you, little girl, to come in here and suggest otherwise?
No, that's not what I said.
Kimber changed tactics.
And as for who we are, we're Mira McCaskey's kids. Do you remember the McCaskeys?
Ah, so you're Ada's granddaughter? That explains why you're not there.
We exchanged puzzled looks.
We're right here, Mr. Prescott, Kimber said.
You know what I meant, young lady. They all know. They know I rescued the town. That's my town. Of course, they were going to let me do anything I wanted as long as the money kept coming in. That's why it's my town.
Is the money still coming in?
Kimber tested.
Well, you're here, aren't you? They didn't like it, but they took the money. They didn't know. Not everything they didn't, but they suspected some. And they must have been okay with it because they kept electing Clary and they kept taking the money.
Prescott picked up a pawn and ran his fingers over it as he talked.
It's just a powder, so unassuming.
A fine, soft powder. The powder doesn't know what it is. It doesn't know it's bad. It's the people who say it's bad.
But it needed to be done. You know that, Ada. You know we had to do it.
Kimber hooked him in. I know we had to do it, but it's your son. I don't think he's doing it right.
Well, of course he isn't.
The elderly Prescott slammed his fist on the table again, and 2 rooks tumbled to the floor.
They were mine. He took them from me. He thought he could do it better, but he took mine and he ruined my legacy. Decades of work, and now it's all run by the powder. It's the dust of the crumbled empire.
What about the skinned men? I asked, caught up in the moment.
What are you talking about, boy?
And the treehouse, the triple tree, what is it for?
Triple tree? I didn't authorize that. We paid triple the price, but it was only for a short while when things were slow. We certainly never charged triple. That's bad business.
Where is
Has my idiot boy been telling you that? Did he offer you triple for them? He's ruining my town, isn't he? God damn it, Jimmy, you get him in here. Ada, get my boy on the phone. You tell Jimmy I want to talk to him. You tell him they're still mine. Ada, get Jimmy on the phone.
Kimber jumped up, and Kyle pushed her behind him as the old man rose to his feet, tall and imposing. We were backing toward the door when the orderly came in with a disapproving look on his face and shooed us out. Long after we'd made it to the lobby, we could still hear Tom Prescott yelling for his son. The ride home was quiet, and I spent it trying to fit the pieces of the puzzle together. The skinned men, the triple tree, the shiny gentleman, the powder. These things seemed to have been pulled blindly from the ether, random and meaningless. The veil over my eyes was thick and heavy, but I was closer to Borrasca than I'd ever been before. I could feel it all around me, but I couldn't see it. I could almost touch it, but I couldn't yet comprehend it. I suddenly realized that Kyle was pulling over off the road, and I snapped out of my contemplation. He put the car in park and turned around to look at me in the back seat. Is this really about Whitney, Sam? Yes. Kimber watched us with worried eyes. Why do you think that? The cops, even your father confirmed that Whitney ran away. I don't believe them, I said through clenched teeth. Look, Sam, we're getting pretty deep in here, and I am with you every step, but I have to know that there's a reason we're doing this. And pulling Kimber in too, I have to know this is important to you for the right reasons and not just an obsession. I looked out the window and realized he'd pulled over near the west rim of Prescott Ore Trailhead. He was right to worry, and even more so to be protective of Kimber. Kyle was thinking it, and so was I. The powder. If Borrasca really did involve moving mass amounts of drugs, did I want to involve my friends any further? This wasn't their fight. I loved these people. Could I really risk their safety for my own curiosities and vendettas? But as hard as I wished I could let them go, I knew I needed them. I have to know what really happened to Whitney, I whispered. Kyle turned back around without a word, and Kimber placed her hand on mine. I jerked my hand away and crossed my arms, then immediately apologized. Kimber just smiled in a forgiving sort of way. Kyle sighed. Sam. He was interrupted by the piercing ring of Kimber's phone. She scrambled for her cell to silence it, but when she saw the name on the screen, she quickly answered. Dad? What? Wait, what do you mean? Dad? No, wait, slow down. Hello? She took the phone away from her ear. Something happened to my mom, and she's at the hospital. Tears filled Kimber's soft green eyes. Kyle threw the car in gear and screeched out of the parking lot. We made the 10-mile trip to the hospital in as many minutes, which is criminally fast on surface streets. Kyle stopped the car at the emergency entrance, and Kimber and I ran inside. A deputy was there waiting. He refused to answer Kimber's desperate questions as he led us to her father.
When the deputy swung open the doors, I saw my dad stand next. When the deputy swung open the doors, I saw my dad standing next to Kimber's, and I braced myself for the worst. Kimber's dad took her in one direction, and my dad took me in the other. Before he said a word, I saw Kimber crumble to the floor on the other side of the room. I looked at my dad helplessly, and he gave me a sympathetic nod and pulled me into a hug. We sat down in a corner, and I stared at my hands as he quietly explained that Mrs. Destaro had gone grocery shopping at around 1 o'clock. Come home, put the groceries away, made 2 lasagnas and a meatloaf and put them in the freezer. Then she got in her car, drove to the hospital, parked in the shade, took the stairs up 7 floors to the roof, and jumped off of it. She lived long enough to apologize to the EMT who found her. I watched Kimber fall apart as her mother's body slowly grew cold in the morgue 1 floor beneath us.